it could be a black swan event. It could be something that affects the future of humanity. And if we behave, very conservatively, we might not last very long.
Well, it's also arrogant.
It's arrogant.
Yeah. This object shows that there's no iron.
Oh, no. So then the composition of the plume of gas
so
around
this is before you knew about the composition.
That's right.
That you wrote this paper.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so as time is going on, you are being shown to be correct.
Well, we found more anomalies.
More anomalies. So this is not a normal thing.
Not a normal thing. So for one thing, there was a glow that looks like an extended feature. And everyone said, oh, that's a tail. That's the signature of a comet.
Right.
And I said, wait a minute. It's pointing towards the sun. It's not pointing away from the sun. Usually cometary tails are made of dust and gas, which is pushed back away from the sun by the radiation and the solar wind, and so this one was pointed towards the sun, not away from the sun. And the question is, why? And actually, I calculated that, it appeared very clearly in the sharpest image we had from the Hubble Space Telescope, which showed an elongation by a factor of 2 towards the sun. But we were looking at it like a cigar. We were looking almost along the cigar long axis, within 10 degrees of the object-sun axis. So we were looking almost edge-on. Mm-hmm. And I calculated if you were to correct for that, this would be a feature that is 10 times longer than it is wide. And that means it's like a jet. So the object had a jet in front of it towards the sun. The question is why? And, the comet experts ignored it and just said, well, comets are strange. Who knows? But my point is, this is a blind date of interstellar proportions. And my advice on blind dates is not to speak or say what you think this is, but to observe the other side. The best way to respond to a blind date is to observe the other side. Don't speak, just observe the other side, because it may be different than what you think. And maybe, on one of the dates, you will have a serial killer on the other side.
Oh, boy. Now, explain, if you could, how we know the composition of this thing.
So we can figure out composition of a plume of gas by taking a spectrum of it, which means you basically have some kind of a prism that breaks, that light with different wavelengths is bent at different angles. And so you spread the light into the different colors. And if you do that, you can find the fingerprints, the spectral fingerprints of specific atoms or molecules, because each atom or molecule has transitions. I taught it just 2 days ago in a class that I teach that is obligatory at the Harvard Astronomy Department, where I was chair for a decade, like between 2011 2020. So this is the mandatory class, and I just taught how, spectral lines emitted by atoms and molecules just 2 days ago. So this is a very well-known thing, and we know the wavelengths of those, and we use them to identify the composition. We know which atoms produce these spectral lines, the fingerprints. It's just like fingerprints, okay? And so what was found, and that's by multiple teams, there are 3 papers on that, we found nickel, a lot of nickel, but very little iron. At first, no iron whatsoever. Now, usually in all the comets in the past, from the solar system and also from interstellar space, there is one comet, Borisov, that was found. It's the second interstellar object, which looked just like a familiar comet. I had nothing to say about that one. It looked like a comet, behaved like a comet. It was a comet, but it had similar abundances of nickel and iron. The only place where we found before much more nickel than iron is in alloys that we produce industrially. For example, for aerospace applications. Right. Nickel alloys have a lot of nickel, no iron. So maybe the skin of this object is industrially produced. That was my suggestion. But what the authors of these papers said is maybe nature is capable of going through the same chemical pathway of producing nickel without iron as we do in our industries. So they made the conjecture that this carbonyl pathway, which is well known in the industry world, carbonyl is the pathway, the name of the pathway. They said, well, maybe this carbonyl pathway happens in nature. We have never seen it before, but that is their